From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Good Sunday afternoon and welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Laura Hutchinson. This month marks 4 years since the June 1st, 2011 tornado. The tornado put our disaster response here in Western Mass to the test. And that's where 22 News in Focus comes in today. We're going to hear from representatives of some of the impacted communities to find out if we're better prepared today to handle a disaster than we were 4 years ago. We'll find out how rebuilding efforts are going and what still needs to be done. Then later we'll track some of the recovery dollars. We'll also hear from the local chapter of the American Red Cross to find out what's changed for them as they respond to disasters around the world all the time. But first, we begin with one of the hardest hit communities that also has some major developments on the way. Joining us, we have Kevin Kennedy, the Chief Development Officer for the Springfield Redevelopment Authority. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here, Laura. Nice to see you.
So a lot happening in Springfield, and one thing we heard this week, of course, MGM is building in Springfield Southland. That's already started. One thing we heard this week, though, is that the I-91 construction project, the viaduct there, could actually stall that project. So before we talk about tornado redevelopment, obviously this project has been a big part of redeveloping the South End. So talk to me about where we stand. What are these delays that could possibly
Well, it was really the outgrowth of the tornado. That was one of the things that MGM looked at in one of the hardest hit areas of Springfield, right where it came across the Connecticut River. MGM right now, we always contemplated that the casino project, the timing of it was going to be similar, very similar to the viaduct project, and it appears the viaduct project is moving along a little bit slower than we expected. And I think MGM is cognizant of that, and one of the important things about that for MGM is you want to make sure with the casino opening that you get off to a good start, because you don't want to leave a bad taste in people's mouths if they had to be delayed or something was wrong with it, and it's very difficult to recover from that. So they're going to talk to us about that, and we're going to be fairly flexible about that, but we've got to make sure that that we kind of protect what Springfield's rights are and that kind of thing. The encouraging thing about it really is MGM has almost $200 million invested already, and it's really in their financial best interest to get moving as quickly as possible. So I think we'll reach a reasonable conclusion.
Okay. Are there some elements of that host community development that you're hoping that they at least honor on time? I mean, obviously we have some payments, but there are also some little details, some security elements. Right. Are there any pieces of that that you're preparing to at least go into, we would still like this on time even if you don't open?
Yeah, I'm pretty well prepared to talk with them starting next week about that. One of the things that's very important, you mentioned, there's a security program for downtown that's very important. There's Riverfront Park money that's very important. There's a revenue stream for Union Station that's very important, and there's a number of things there that we're going to talk about. So again, I think we'll be flexible and reasonable, but we want to make sure that the project gets done. Okay,
so they were originally supposed to open in 2017. Now they're talking possible 2018. What are you?
Well, the earliest they were going to complete the project was August of 17. They had until February of 18 to actually open.
Okay.
In this situation here, we're probably looking at a delay of somewhere around 6 months or so, so it's not substantial.
Okay. You were saying that the tornado really turned into an opportunity for Springfield, that there are a lot of projects happening. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it brought the community together. I think Mayor Sarno and the team did a real good job of involving them in the process. We had 3,000 people that participated. Rather than looking at it as a problem, we looked at it as an opportunity to rebuild, and we're not only got the casino project out of it, but we're going to be building a new senior center. We're going to be building a new South End Community Center. We're rehabbing the Echo Center in Forest Park. So we've taken advantage of the situation. The thing that I think Springfield is most proud of, with the help of the state, was the fact that Brookings School got demolished in the tornado, and that has been fully rebuilt, and today it's open 4 years later.
And
so
it's beautiful.
Remarkable.
And it's beautiful, it really is. Cathedral High School also destroyed in the tornado. Now, there's talk about where this new Catholic high school will go. I know that you're hoping that will go at the Springfield site there. What if it doesn't? Are there any plans for that land at all?
We have not heard, and it's a privately owned property by the diocese, and the diocese has to make their decision about what they want to do from an educational perspective. We've been urging them to look at Cathedral and, you know, restore the facility on Surrey Road, but that's going to be their decision. I would say that from a large viewpoint or a larger project viewpoint, the Cathedral situation 4 years down the road is probably our biggest disappointment in terms of not being rebuilt. And again, we were able to rebuild Brookings School in that same time frame. So I'm hoping the diocese makes a decision soon, and we hope it goes back to Surrey Road.
As we were talking about before we started taping, you know, that community is, you know, already capable of handling the school. You've already had a school there. So that, as you said, would be a good option for Springfield just to go back in there.
Frankly, the neighborhood wants that school back. It's actually very good for real estate values, and everybody there was actually quite proud of that facility.
Okay, well, we'll continue to watch. It has been a slow process, as you mentioned, but we'll continue to watch that. How about some of the other communities? Some people lost their homes, lost everything up in Island Pond Road area, very severely damaged. Where are we as far as residential houses are concerned?
Most of them have been rebuilt with private insurance. There is one low-income housing project that we're quite concerned with in Springfield that hasn't been rebuilt yet. We have some money set aside to help them, but the residents themselves have to get together and make certain decisions about the development. We've been meeting with them, and we've been urging them to move forward, and I know that the community really wants to happen. But on a bigger scale, most of Springfield's been rebuilt from the tornado damage, so we're actually in pretty good shape as far as that goes.
Did you have many properties that people abandoned, you know, took an opportunity to leave, move somewhere else, and they left their home behind? Do you have abandoned property that you've had to...
A huge percentage of them, almost 100%, actually used the private insurance that they had, and they rebuilt. There's been some local aid that we gave them to help some other people, but for the most part they've been rebuilt. We've got very little on the foreclosure side from the tornado.
Okay. Do you know how much this cost the city overall when you look at the tornado and all that it did? You know, I mean, you said there are a lot of positive development and so much good. You know, do you know how much it impacted the city?
You know, we don't have a handle on the private insurance part of it because it was private, but on the we did receive about $45 million in FEMA aid and from disaster aid, both from HUD and FEMA. So that's what the city got back, and it's that money that we're using to do the senior center and Echoes and the other projects I talked about.
You know, it's interesting to have a tornado hit an urban setting like that. So many people were at work and, you know, walking around the downtown area. Do you think that the city is better prepared now? You know, if now we know a tornado can go over the Connecticut River into downtown Springfield and cut through Western Mass. So do you think that we are prepared for that again?
Oh, we're certainly prepared for it. We not only had the tornado, remember we had that disastrous nor'easter that came in October of the same year.
Right.
And we followed it up the following year in Springfield with a little bit of a gas explosion that happened in downtown.
A little bit of a gas explosion.
We've had more than enough training at disaster relief and disaster reaction. But I think our public safety personnel are very well trained and very well prepared.
Yeah. Many of the people who are in their leadership positions now are actually still the same. Mayor Sarno's there. You know, many of the emergency personnel. You know, how important is it that they communicate? Has there been a better communication flow since this tornado happened, and is there a new plan, so to speak? Did we learn any lessons?
Actually, the disaster preparedness in Springfield goes back to the chlorine fire of 1988 when we had to evacuate a 1/4 of the city.
Wow.
We had over 500,000 pounds of chlorine that was chemically reacting, and nobody in the world could tell us how to put it out. So in the final analysis, what the fire chief decided to do was to hit it as much water as he can and accelerate the burn of the chlorine, and hopefully, and fortunately, we had a good wind at that time, and it dissipated pretty well. But our preparedness goes back to those times, so it's been pretty close to 3 decades.
So you're pretty happy with the way it was handled and are confident that should something like this happen again, we would be prepared to handle it.
Yeah, and the most important thing is there was very little loss of life. I think in the whole tornado situation, I think there was, what, 1 or 2?
Right. Right, there were at least 2 in West Springfield for sure. And you know, as far as the other projects are concerned, you know, Springfield has a lot happening between the highway reconstruction right now that we're talking about at the beginning of the segment, also Union Station. Where are we in terms of the timeline of these as well? A lot of stuff happening down there.
We're excited about Union Station. We just had some meetings about that. It's fully funded. The garage is being constructed. The demolition on the interior of Union Station is going on, and it's full speed ahead. It looks like we should be completed mid-fall of next year, and that's going to be a very important regional project for everybody. The rail improvements that were done on the north-south part from New Haven all the way up to the Vermont line, the new platforms that are being built in Holyoke, Northampton, and Greenfield, it's really good for the region.
And as far as the highway construction is concerned, how do you feel? Is this going to impact downtown in a negative way? How are you bracing for this?
Well, we're going to keep our fingers crossed that everything is going to work out for the best, but at the same time we're preparing to manage it also. We've been meeting together with a number of the different downtown organizations, and the whole key to this is going to be communication. Put up the information as best you can and tell everybody where the situation is in terms of traffic flow, and there'll be improvements made to East and West Columbus Avenue that'll be starting very soon in terms of new traffic lights and a whole bunch of other things that will do the best that we can with that. But again, a MassDOT project, and the city will work with them as best we can.
Okay, very good. Kevin Kennedy in Springfield, thank you so much. There's so much happening there. I appreciate you coming on and talking to us. So much good news coming out of this tornado.
So much good news. We're very happy, and we'll be welcoming the Chinese to Springfield very soon with a new manufacturing opportunity in East Springfield.
So many projects to talk about. Very good. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And after the break, we'll be talking with the mayor of another city that is recovering from the tornado as well. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about how far we've come since the June 1st tornado 4 years ago, and if we're better prepared to handle a disaster like that today. We just spent some time talking about some of the happenings in Springfield. We talked about MGM's casino proposal as well as some of the other projects in the works there. We'll continue talking to some of the hardest hit communities about their recovery, and later we'll follow the money to see how much this tornado cost our area and if money is still being collected to help victims. But first, we just finished talking about Springfield's community. Let's now head west over the Connecticut River to West Springfield, where homes were destroyed and lives were taken in the tornado. We have Mayor Ed Sullivan from West Springfield with us to talk to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, this is something that you sort of inherited because you weren't the mayor when this tornado came through.
That's correct.
But there are, if you drive through West Springfield, you can see some homes that look the way they did right after the tornado. So let's talk about that. There are several houses still destroyed.
There are. There were actually along the river, or Route 5, and we're aware of that. And what we did is we started, in conjunction with the Attorney General's office, a receivership program to try to get these houses moved along, repaired, or taken down. So they're on the list. The way it works is based on sanitary code violations and other issues. We put them in the program, we go to court, we try to get a receiver to buy into the property, either rehab it or move it along in another direction. So those houses are presently on the list to be addressed in our receivership program.
What happened there? Because, you know, Kevin was talking about how the majority of residents there rebuilt, and they rebuilt quickly in the neighborhoods. So what happened in West Springfield? Why don't you think people rebuilt there?
Well, actually, a lot of folks did. There was over 700 housing units damaged.
Right.
So we have about 12 left out of that. That's, you know, the percentages are low, but it's significant because it's along a major
They're
roadway.
Visible.
They're visible. But most people did. The average damage was between $25,000 and $50,000 to the houses, and they did pay, a lot of folks paid for that out of private insurance. But for some reason, these aren't addressed, and that's why we've put them into the receivership program to make sure we can move them along.
So what does the timeline typically look with something like that? When do you think there will be some sort of change or demolition or something?
Right. It's been a while, so you hate to prolong it any further.
Right.
And quite frankly, we receive complaints So we try to move it along, but still, I mean, you're still looking at anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on if you can get it into the court system and get a receiver to buy into the program. So it could be anywhere from 6 months to a year before you see any significant action on the houses.
Now, how much financially did this cost West Springfield?
We were into it for about $1 million. We were reimbursed basically $1 million through FEMA and state funding. And then we were fortunate enough to receive a disaster recovery grant of $750,000 to repair some businesses. So we're addressing one business on Main Street. We're going to use that to clean the site up and tear down the building. But there's still a couple other ones, again, along the same area of the community where the houses are. So there's a couple there, but the owners are hesitant and not sure what they're trying to do, maybe sell the property for whatever the present value is. So we'll see how that plays out also.
Okay. 2 lives were lost in West Springfield during this tornado. Many communities were impacted, but Springfield really had a heartache there. You know, 2 lives lost and a number of homes destroyed. Do people still talk about this? Is there concern about if we are prepared for this, if there is a way to handle something like this again?
Well, hopefully it'll be a once-in-a-lifetime event.
Let's hope.
But
it was rare.
Right, but our emergency responders did really a phenomenal job. They set up a substation down in the area where the tornado hit, and they did a great job cleaning up the area, clearing the roadways, getting the power back on. We've addressed the sheltering issue in West Springfield. Actually, yesterday we had a generator delivered to our town hall for backup power so we can use it as a headquarters. So these things obviously take time. Here we are 4 years later and we're still working on things like an emergency generator for the town hall, which was provided through grant money. But I believe we're prepared. We meet regularly. We talk about it. It's still in our minds, so we continually look at ways to maybe improve response time and those sorts of things. But they really did a good job that day and the few days after that, cleaning up the area and responding and going through the different properties. We have our sanitary enforcement code person has made 660 visits to the different properties, mostly housing units. So that over 4 years, I mean, that's pretty significant, almost spending full time doing inspections to make sure houses are back up to speed and those sorts of things. So we've spent a lot of time and energy, you know, in the aftermath of the tornado.
Yeah. Now, you know, Springfield was seeing a lot of business come into the area. You know, I know that you had just a few residents leave their homes. Did you notice any is there any real change as far as businesses leaving or businesses coming in or anything like that? Have you noticed anything directly impacted by the tornado in that sense?
No, not really. Most of the businesses, except for the 2 I mentioned, 3 I mentioned, have rebuilt. So there's no real transfer in or out of West Springfield. You might see more of that based on what's going on in the south end of Springfield as they have to relocate, but not so much related to the tornado.
Okay, and how are you preparing? I mean, you know, there are a lot of new developments coming into this area. We were just talking about the highway project as well. You've had the rotary construction going on in West Springfield. You know, how are all these projects impacting your community as well?
Well, it's significant relative to traffic. I mean, both rotaries, the north end and the Memorial, and then the viaduct, we're bracing for increased traffic. I don't believe it's all going to go on Columbus Ave. It'll transfer over the river to Route 5, and it'll push it even further into West Springfield on Main Street and Union Street. So we know it's coming. We're bracing for it. Hopefully, it won't be as bad as we believe. So, but we're ready. We're prepared.
And you know, when we talk about this emergency preparedness as well, you said that you meet on this on a pretty regular basis.
We do.
So, is there any ongoing changes as far, you know, any visual changes, you know, or changes that you can really talk to us about, that things went wrong or things that went right that you've been able to tweak or take from other communities? You know, what are some of those big takeaways from 4 years ago?
Well, again, they did a great job. It's more tweaking the existing plans. The police, the fire, the you know, first responders, they were prepared. It showed. You have to understand that we have the largest rail yard, or second largest in New England. So they constantly train on hazmat and other issues. So So our guys and gals are ready to respond. They've had to respond on occasion down to the rail yard, to CSX yard. So they're prepared. It's part of their training. It's ongoing. So that's why I believe they did such a great job after the tornado.
Yeah, and what kind of help do you feel like that would help West Springfield redevelop some of these homes and properties? You know, have you solicited funds from the government? You know, what is it that can be done to help you out more?
We have, through the Community Block Grant Program. We've been in contact with them. That's how we secured the $750,000 to rehab this business site. And we continually look at that, and we look for other grant monies that we might be able to avail ourselves to. So that's ongoing. Our community development director does a good job at that, and also our planning department. So we do okay when it comes to grant money, but you can always do better, though.
You can always do better. It is an ongoing process. 4 years later, it sounds like you have a good handle on, you know, some of these changes, and also striving to get some of those properties fixed up.
Yeah.
Very good. Mayor Ed Sullivan, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. Really do appreciate it. And another hard-hit community is making great strides in their recovery as well. We'll hear their story after the break, and then later we'll talk to the American Red Cross, and we'll talk about whether money is still available for tornado victims. So there's still a lot ahead. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back. You're watching 22 News in Focus, and today we're talking about the recovery of communities that were impacted by the June 1st, 2011 tornado. We've heard from West Springfield, where the tornado touched down, then crossed the river into the south end of Springfield. The tornado cut through 40 miles of western Mass. Perhaps one of the hardest hit communities with some of the most widespread damage was Munson. Homes were destroyed, a historic church and town hall were seriously damaged. So joining us now to update us on the rebuilding effort there is Evan Bessard, Munson's town administrator. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you have sort of an interesting role. You're the town administrator now, but you were the emergency management director right after the tornado. And I know that you wanted to step into that role because, you know, you watched your community go through tragedy. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the tornado missed my house by about a quarter mile, half a mile. And that night I was on the phone with some of my friends. I grew up in Munson. I know a lot of people. And it's interesting, my friends seemed to downplay it. And then the following day when I went down to help out, I actually wound up tarping some roofs and helping wherever I could. I saw that it wasn't as small as they kind of made it sound. So we did some cleanup efforts, and then the position of emergency management director opened up, and I was encouraged to apply for that, and they selected me, and then I moved forward from there.
Well, that's great, and it was something that you really wanted to do. You were passionate about it, and you had a lot to handle because, you know, as we were talking about early in the program, there was the tornado, and then there was the October snowstorm, and then we had Hurricane Irene, and, you know, Mother Nature has given us our fair share over the last few years. Yeah. So what have you learned from all of this? How has Munson changed their sort of game plan, so to speak, when disasters hit?
We've changed the way we approach disasters quite a bit. You know, we have a legacy, and I think this is similar with all towns in I would think of the entire country, that you develop a plan, it's a real thick book, and it gets put on the shelf and it collects dust, and then when a disaster strikes, no one knows what that book says. And that's certainly true in our community as well. We've since really tightened up our emergency operating center procedures. We seem to really work well together because we've gone through it so many times now. Everyone seems to know their role. We also have put in place some community notification systems that we did not have prior to the tornado.
Oh, okay.
We contracted with a company called Code Red, and that lets us call every number in the town. We also have a feature of that where people can sign up for weather alerts. So as soon as the National Weather Service puts us in a polygon, you get an automatic either email, text, phone call, all three, whatever you sign up for. And I think that was really reassuring for the community that we took that additional step. Beyond that, we do have a brand new EOC in our new town hall. It serves as a dual focus room function room, excuse me.
Emergency Operations Center?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So we have monitors on the wall, and we have technology in that room that would really help us should we have to open another emergency operating center.
Right. So have you had to utilize some of these functions, you know, the call system, and have you given it some, you know, have you had to use it for something?
Yeah, actually it worked yesterday for the severe thunderstorm
Oh,
warning.
great. Okay.
So
That's
that
great.
it's always reassuring when you actually get the call. We've used it many times since then. It really is a great tool. Most recently, when we kept having snowstorms all winter, every Monday, it sounds like a small issue, but trash would be delayed for the entire town by 1 day.
Right.
So what winds up happening is you have trash on the curb, it gets hit by the plows, it gets pushed into the
Right.
snow. It's a real mess. And so I think that residents really appreciated that they could get a notification and know that not to put their stuff out, and there's no animals. So even something as small as that, it really does.
Keeps you all on the same page.
It does.
That's
It
great.
does.
You know, and it also sounds like, too, you know, when people see these dark clouds rolling in, those people who lived there during the tornado must have some kind of, you know, PTSD when you see that. It's scary to think that. So that must just be very reassuring to at least get an alert, like, you know, hey, this is just a severe thunderstorm.
Right.
We're okay.
Absolutely. There's definitely still some fear in the community. You actually, I see it mostly on social media. You know, we'll push out an alert, or I'll watch some of the community pages, and there's still people that get very anxious.
Jumpy, yeah,
and
anxious,
and rightfully so. So
right.
yes.
It was a scary time here.
Absolutely.
You know, I find it interesting in West Springfield. I noticed those homes that still haven't been rebuilt. You can see the communities in Springfield. One thing I notice when I drive through Munson is the trees. You lost a lot of trees, and I know that there's been an effort to try to replant them. How is that going?
It's going very well. We do have a very active tree committee. And they've replanted most of Main Street, State Street, most of the downtown area, both residentially and on municipal property into tree belts and whatnot. The problem that we run into is that these trees are 10, 15 feet tall. They're nothing like the 100-year-old, 150-year-old trees that we lost, and they won't be in our lifetimes, unfortunately.
Right.
I know that people were very disappointed on the outset because they want it to look exactly like it looked, and it's not going to. We are currently working with Senator Ann Goby. She's looking into getting some more money to replant some of the backland areas to maybe help the forests come back quicker.
Right.
But as far as the major replantings, that's been accomplished.
You're right. And I know your government buildings as well were severely damaged. There was the steeple on the church as well. So where are you with that? And how was that, working without government buildings for a while? What was this transition like for you?
So we were fortunate to have a municipal building in a school that was not utilized. So when Town Hall got damaged, we were able to move most of that infrastructure right into the school and really minimize the impact to the community. Now the problem is that building leaks water. It was a non-use building for a reason.
Right.
So our employees did put up with a lot for 3 years. You know, some health issues, mold. We had termite problems. It was not a good span of time for those folks, but they stuck it out. I won't include me in that. I was only in there for about 6 months, so I really only had to deal with it for a short time.
Right.
But you know, on top of that, our police department actually operated out of trailers, mobile trailers, for 3 years. And having been the emergency management director and worked with them in those trailers, you know, they did a tremendous job of continuing their quality work while operating under those circumstances. So we are in our new town hall now. It's officially open and running.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a long building process. We're just finishing up the landscaping this week in the rear of the building, and I think we're pretty much done.
You're pretty much good to go.
Yeah.
Now it's just waiting for those trees to grow back.
Right. And we had really beautiful plantings in front of the building, and we're trying to get the grass to come in and all the small things that you don't really realize you're going to be
You don't
dealing
think
with.
about, but
Right.
of course, yeah. And how about homes and the residents? You know, we talked about the government building, and the steeple was all
Correct.
replenished and everything. How about, you know, the people? What are you hearing from residents and their homes? And
It seems that the contact I have with residents, if they were going to rebuild, they've rebuilt, and they're done, or they're close to done, and they're moving on. There are probably a handful that won't be rebuilt at all. It seems like people have just walked away.
and And are those in visible locations as well? West Springfield is dealing with homes that are in very visible locations.
We have the same issue.
Okay.
You know, the tornado path went right through Main Street, downtown Munson. So some of those homes are in that central downtown area, especially the gateway. Right when you turn the corner into Munson, there's a couple that are either still in construction or look like they probably won't be. I do get asked quite frequently by residents, you know, what's going to happen with this, and they are private properties, and the town doesn't really have the funding to take them down, and they're not abandoned. So it's
Right.
a different. I think it's a different story with West Springfield. Some of those properties
Are abandoned.
they're totally abandoned, and it's now up to the municipality to handle
Right.
that.
So what do you do from this point? I mean, is there an effort to try to, you know, help out in some way or get them to move things along?
Yeah,
What is the plan there?
Absolutely. So I've actually been speaking with our building commissioner quite frequently in the last couple of weeks about reaching out to more of these homes and seeing the homeowners and seeing if we can't either get what their game plan is, or what can we do to help, or what direction, you know, what's the next step that they need to take. So
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. Evan Brassard, you have so much going on in Munson. Thank
do.
you so much for coming on and talking to us. It's so nice to hear about all this wonderful rebuilding, and it seems like things are really under control there, moving along.
hopefully.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Appreciate it. After the break, we'll hear from one local organization that helps provide funding to communities. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the restoration and rebuilding efforts 4 years after the June 1st tornado. We've heard from 3 communities that suffered tremendous destruction and how their rebuilding efforts are going. In a little bit, we'll hear from the American Red Cross about their response not only to local disasters, but disasters around the world. But first, let's talk about the money needed locally to rebuild and continue rebuilding after the tornado. Not all of the money used to help these communities came from MEMA or insurance coverage. Some of it came from private funds to provide support to non-profit service organizations within those communities. So joining me now to talk about that, we have Nancy Ritchie, Vice President for Programs at the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having us.
You know, many people think that these are just MEMA and FEMA that come in and do some of this work and help financially, but that's really not the case. There is money here, and you can talk to us about that. Tell me what you did after the tornado.
Well, the first thing that I did as part of the staff was to try to figure out what happened in the region to the nonprofits that were in the direct path of the tornado, to see what the impacts could have possibly been. Got in touch with other funders in the region, whether we're talking other foundations, banks, people doing similar work, the United Way, to what we do at the Community Foundation, and started to piece together just what was the impact, what happened, and what are some ways that we could help. Part of that research, too, involved talking to folks in Alabama who had experienced tornadoes just a few weeks before, talking to folks in Oklahoma, searching Council on Foundation websites to figure out what other communities had done, how they had tackled trying to be part of the solution, part of the way to bring your community back together.
So what were some of the biggest impacts that you saw after doing that research?
One of the biggest impacts was to take your time, not to necessarily rush into coming up with a solution that would solve things in a couple of days. That there needed to be a process that engaged people in a community, that thoroughly understood what the issues were, thoroughly understood how to begin to solve them, and bring people together. So one piece that we did through the Community Foundation was we engaged with other funders in the area and shared information. Who knew what? What organizations were trying to raise money for particular things, so that we weren't duplicating what each other were doing, and so that we could look to see that we were making impacts at different places along the continuum. And when I talk about the continuum, relief is the first phase. When people are hurt and everybody reacts to relief, wants to help, solve, make everybody feel better, make everybody have clothes, food, shelter. The second phase is recovery, and that's when you really get into settling people, finding people places to live, or more on a long-term basis. And then rebuilding. And rebuilding, was the final phase, which Mr. Kennedy talked about earlier, where we're really moving forward as a community to put some things in place that will hopefully, improve the overall outcomes for everybody.
Yeah. So was there any one nonprofit or area that needed the most financial support for you, and how did you go about doing that?
Well, we ended up providing grants to 20 different organizations. And for instance, out in Munson and Brimfield, we provided funding so that they could further equip those volunteers that were coming in from throughout the country to cut the trees down. So we provided money for gas, for food, to rent equipment. And so it was really leveraging resources that people were already putting in place so that they could make better use of them. South End Community Center, for example, didn't exist, but they wanted to have their summer programs continue. And they were able to find space, but they needed additional resources to pay for transportation, to pay for the additional programming that was needed for their participants. So filling the gaps in a lot of ways. HAP Housing did a terrific job at case management work with people that were trying to file paperwork with FEMA, trying to take care of all their insurance issues, trying to get resettled, providing case managers for them, providing Catholic Charities funding to be able to, again, help resettle people, rebuilding Together Springfield, the same thing, just using our resources, which totaled for this process $250,000.
Wow.
So
overall, is that how much you ended up spending on the tornado?
Yes.
Wow. And how was that, I mean, more than you had raised and put out at one point? Was that some sort of a record for you in this organization, or?
It was a tremendous, I think, effort. Typically in a year we distribute about $1.2 to $1.5 million in grant dollars to nonprofits throughout the region. So considering that this was a very contained geographic area, some of our own funds went into it. We also had donations from 100 different individuals and groups that contribute to that pool of funds as well.
So are there still tornado monies available there, or how would people go about if they are still looking to do some sort of project or anything related to this and we're looking for some financial support?
The funds that we had designated specifically for that purpose have been dispersed, but through our regular grant program, we would certainly entertain applications from organizations that were still trying to fulfill needs. I know that some of the rebuilding of homes and helping people resettle was even happening a couple of months ago. So
it's true, and it's really interesting hearing some of these organizations that you were helping, because they were going and these programs were continuing, as you were saying, but many people might not realize where the money was coming from to be able to do that. So that's very interesting. So talk to me about the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts. Like, how does that work? What sort of programs are available there?
All right, well, we are one of about 700 community foundations. They're throughout the country and throughout the world. And basically we operate as a community endowment. So we bring funds in, we invest them, and we distribute them. And we do it through volunteers, so it's not staff making the decisions. It's a cadre of about 150 volunteers that help us figure out how to make those investments, figure out where the funds get distributed and where scholarships get distributed. We distribute about $8 million annually.
Wow. And do you take donations? Like, how do you get your money?
Our funds come from individuals that are generous, that want to set up a fund, maybe in memory of somebody, maybe they've sold a business and they feel it's important to do something charitable and give back to the community. Individuals, and as part of their legacy, as part of their will. We have several, more than several that have been bequests and funds that have been set up. And we cover the 3 counties of Western Mass, the Pioneer Valley.
Wow, and so really what you do is look to find where that need is and distribute that money wherever it's needed, certainly helping the community in so many ways.
Correct.
Very good. Nancy Ritchie, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. This was, a very costly disaster in Western Massachusetts, and it sounds like your funds were so needed, and so nice to talk to you about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
I really appreciate it. And are you prepared for a natural disaster? That's a good question. We'll talk about disaster preparedness with the American Red Cross after this. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we've been talking about recovery efforts of the 4th anniversary of the June 1st, 2011 tornado. We've discussed the rebuilding efforts with 3 communities that were impacted by the deadly storm. We also talked about the continued efforts by local nonprofits to maintain services for communities and businesses that were affected. Joining me now to talk about emergency preparedness, we have Ellen Potashnik with the American Red Cross here in Western Massachusetts. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Laura, for inviting us.
Now, you were on the ground and at the shelter at the Mass Mutual Center when this tornado hit. Talk to me about how we responded and reacted at that point and some things that we've learned since then as well.
Well, I think it was an evening of disbelief for a lot of people because these kinds of events don't happen in Western Mass,
Right.
and in fact they did. I was actually at the Mass Mutual Center the evening of the tornado. People were brought in from all different kinds of areas in the community. There was concern about gas leaks. There was concern about additional weather events possibly coming and impacting. There was actually a prom going on upstairs in the Mass Mutual Center that night because the students had already been transported and were actually at the site. The shelter itself that got set up was really somewhat of a spontaneous event out of the goodness of the hearts of the management of Mass Mutual. They opened their doors, and from there we began to work with people and to feed people and to try to make sure everybody was safe and accounted for.
Now, I know that you go on missions to other parts of the country to help out when things happen. You went down to Mississippi, you said, to respond to tornadoes?
I have.
Talk to me about what it's like to be in a disaster at home versus being a disaster far away, and how you sort of learn how to react to these disasters.
Each one of these experiences is an absolute learning adventure. And of course, when something happens in your own community, you're worried about your own family, you're worried about your own property, you're worried about your world around you. And I think a lot of times you need to make sure that your own situation is safe, that your own family is safe before you're able to help other people. We learn a lot when we have our trainings about the incident command structure and working with other partners about the most important person on the scene being you. So you first need to make sure that your own world is in a nice, safe place before you can help others.
Now, were there any changes made to how we respond to disasters after this tornado, as far as communication goes, or any of these, responses? Has there been any changes since then?
We have developed a heightened awareness in our extended Western Mass community. We have developed a host of preparedness programs, both with children through the Pillowcase Project. There's a home fire preparedness program that's going on now. We work with seniors, and there have been, through the organizations that are all active in disaster, multiple meetings so that people know each other, know what our capacities are, know what our gaps are, and can plan accordingly.
And what is the best way for people to prepare themselves and their families for disaster? Some people were driving on the Memorial Bridge when this tornado came through, and people were like, I don't know what to do if I'm in a car and something like this happens. What should people do in some of the different situations when disaster strikes?
The Red Cross has some excellent apps that you can load and read about, and it describes actions to take during tornadoes, actions to take during hurricanes, things to be aware of, downed wires, downed trees, electrical, food safety if you've lost power, and reading those and following through on the recommendations is really what would be important.
Yeah, we are in a severe weather season right now. We've already had some very strong storms come through. We know just losing power can cripple the way we do business in Western Massachusetts, I've heard, having that pack of food and just a flashlight down in your basement, just in case, how much should you have down there? What's too much? What's over-prepared? What's a reasonable preparedness?
My own family calls my basement Costco, but we ask that people have a gallon of water per person per day, that you have canned goods, that you have flashlights, and that you have blankets, and that you have, if you know a storm or an event is coming and you need medications, that you do what you need to do with your pharmacy to get them filled. Just in general, being aware of special needs that you may have in your household with any individuals who have such needs, food for your pets, and a lot of it's going to depend on where you live. If you're in a rural area where your water supply is dependent on an electric pump, then that may be a very different situation than if you're in Springfield, where you have water availability. If you have a generator, you're going to be in a different position than someone who does not. So you need to tailor it to your own personal situations.
And you need to take it seriously, because we've seen that this can happen, and homes can fly away, and you just never know. In Western Massachusetts, anything can happen. We've seen really a lot in the last few years.
We've dealt with gas explosions and snowstorms, and obviously the tornado event.
Yeah, exactly. When we need help, we of course rely on the American Red Cross to be there for us. What is the American Red Cross doing? Sometimes we don't even see it. Do you have people right now down in Texas responding to some of these flooding? Where do you have people right now?
We do. We have 2 people from Western Mass are in Texas now. They're both healthcare professionals, and they're working in shelters, providing healthcare services and referrals to families that are in the shelters. Sometimes we do outreach. We work in partnership with the local Red Cross and with the local emergency personnel to try to help people with the next step in their recovery.
And how can we help you help others? Some people want to give to help the Red Cross, to help others. What is the best way for people to give? Is it blood donations? Is it money? Is it canned goods? Is it blankets? What is it? Toiletries? What is it that the Red Cross needs to help?
So the Red Cross can make the most impact with donated dollars, because we can purchase in bulk and we can supply things that are actually needed in a particular community, since things are going to vary depending on the nature of the disaster. So money is obviously important. Time is important. If you're able to volunteer and you're able to make the kind of commitment and participate in the training that's needed to become a qualified volunteer, that's absolutely something that we need. And then your talent as a volunteer. People come to the Red Cross and bring all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of experiences to the table, which makes it a very rich experience. And we deal with all kinds of people in the community with all kinds of needs. So
what a great way to give back. If you don't have money, you can volunteer time.
Absolutely.
Ellen Potashnik, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
The American Red Cross, always doing such wonderful things for our community. Thank you for being here. And we'll have the last word for you after the break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Watching 22 News in Focus. This month marks 4 years since the June 1st, 2011 tornado, the tornado that put our disaster response to the test. Today we checked back in with some of the community's hardest hit in the tornado to find out how they're doing and what still needs to be done. That is our program for today. We want to thank our guests for joining us. Thanks to you at home for watching. If you've missed any of it, you can watch it in full on our website at wwlp.com. From all of us here at 22 News, we wish you a wonderful Sunday. Take care.